What's up, you guys? Welcome to today's video. As you can tell by the title, we're going to be talking about prison. Again, but today we're going to be talking about private prison versus public prisons. I'm going to break down how private prisons make money, what the goals of a private prison are, as well as what are the goals of a public or nonprofit prison. There's a moral dilemma, in my personal opinion, with private prisons as well, so we're going to talk about that. I'm also going to leave articles that I looked up to research this video. I will leave them in the description box of this video. Never just take my word for something, definitely research everything yourself. I also want to say that I am not an expert on this topic. I'm just a chick with a camera that went to prison and now I have some opinions on it. I am also 5 weeks away from my bachelor's degree. It is Bachelor of Science in Criminal Program Support Services. That name is way too long, but basically it just means I've been studying corrections for 4 years and I'm about to have a degree in prison. And everyone that's been to prison says they have a degree in prison, but I'm like actually about to have a degree in prison. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So let's start out with what are the goals of a private for-profit prison versus the goals of a public nonprofit prison. I know I'm gonna mess up saying that somewhere in the video. It's just who I am at this point to misspeak, so just bear with me. But a public prison, their goal is to take in inmates off the street, house them, hopefully attempt to rehabilitate them, and then in most cases, re-enter them into society. That is the goal of a state-run and public non-profit prison. The goal of a private prison is to improve their bottom line by any and all means necessary. The goals of a private prison are to make money. That is literally the only goal of that prison. Now, a private prison is going to make money any way that they can, whether that is cutting salary from their correction officers, which you should never do. And the reason why you should never cut a correctional officer's salary is because that leaves them vulnerable to accepting bribes from inmates. It leaves them vulnerable to falling prey to the inmates. And it's so easy for these correctional officers to bring in contraband that can get them paid thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So if we're not paying our correctional officers well enough, that leaves them vulnerable. So that is a huge issue that I have with private prisons, paying their workers less. Private prisons will also not train officers the way that they need to be trained. And basically that just cuts cost as well. If you don't have to put them through training as long, and you just kind of throw them into this prison, you're saving money. And they will save money any way that they can. Now let's just talk about how private prisons make their money. They receive a stipend from the government. Now this can be paid out in several different ways. This can get paid out in a monthly set amount, a yearly set amount, or it can be paid out per inmate, per facility. That's usually how it's paid out, by the body count. So if that stipend from the government is paid out per body count, it is in the private prison's best interest to keep and house inmates longer. That is why a lot of inmates get written up for all kinds of really ridiculous things, like talking in the hallway. Now, there are all kinds of things that prisons will write up inmates for. I have literally been written up for out of place of assignment. OPA is what it's called. And out of place of assignment usually means you are not where you're supposed to be. It means that you're supposed to be in this location, but you're over here on the other side of the facility, or you're supposed to be in the barracks, but you went to a different location. That's usually what out of place of assignment is. You guys, I've been written up for out of place of assignment for walking in the hallway and like standing over the line. So in prisons, a lot of the time, not every prison, every prison's different. They have these lines down the hallway. Inmates are not allowed to walk in the middle of the hallway. They have to walk on the sides. That way correctional officers can come through if they need to. Correctional officers have that center lane in the halls, in the very large halls. So say they're like taking an inmate to SEG, or they have to get through really quickly. They're not trying to like dodge all these inmates. They just have a straight path to wherever they need to go. So there are lines that dictate where inmates can and can't stand. And I have been written up for having a foot over the line because that correctional officer didn't like me and he just wrote me up for it. So, you know. So anyway, back on topic. Inmates will get written up for all kinds of things so that these for-profit prisons can't keep them there because they get more money that way. So let's go back to how private prisons make money. Private prisons can tell the government they need X amount of dollars per body per day. Now the government will pay whatever they say as long as what the private prison says that they need is below what the public prison says that they need. So say the private prison, their operating cost per person per day is $100. But then they tell the government the operating cost is $150 per inmate per day. That's what we need. The government says, okay, that is X amount of dollars below the public, we'll give that to you. That spread is how private prisons make their money. The company that runs private prisons is called CCA, or now it's called CoreCivic. CoreCivic has a total equity value of $1.4 billion. So in the 80s, when the war on drugs took place and we were seeing a huge influx in inmates, there was a very serious need to create the space to house these inmates. So what ended up happening was the government outsourced, because this is America and that's what we do. So they outsourced to then CCA, or Corrections Corporation of America. Now it's called CoreCivic. They outsourced and they said, hey, we need these facilities. And CCA was like, since we're in the private sector, we can build these facilities so much faster. We can build them at a lower cost. We can operate them at a lower cost. So just let us house these inmates. So that's what ended up happening. That's how we got into the whole private prison thing anyway, was because of the extreme need. Now, federal prisons have the most private inmates in their facilities, and we saw that increase in the year 2000 by 77%. That's a really high demand for federal inmates. Now, because the private sector says we can save the taxpayers money, this is a great idea, everyone's on board, we're gonna save money, that's what we're gonna do, we're saving the taxpayers money, that's what we care about, the taxpayers. There's no evidence that private prisons save the taxpayers money. Taxpayers pay more money to jails, like local jails and prisons, than they even realize, but it comes out in county general municipal funds, is how it is, how it's worded. So we don't really know how much we are paying towards local jails, because it's not written out to where we're like, oh, we're paying X to the jail. No, it's just general funds. And that general funds part of the budget for taxes, that's what goes to jails. Taxpayers pay $38.8 billion nationally to fund jails and prisons. Now, the answer is not as simple as people just need to stop breaking the law. This is a very complex, very layered problem. So we'll get to that in a second. So do I think private prisons are not a good thing? Yes, I do. But this all comes down to, how is the facility taking care of the individuals that they house? Are they treating them fairly? Are they treating them humanely? Are they rehabilitating them? Is recidivism lower in private prisons versus state prisons? No. Is violence less in private prisons than state prisons? Also no. So they're only making money and they're not making the system better. They're not adding anything to the prison system. They're only lining their own pockets, and that is a huge moral issue. If a private prison was functioning and they were making money, but they were paying their officers a higher rate, they were rehabilitating inmates, and the recidivism rate was lower in the private prisons, then I would be like, this is working, this is helping. But it's not. It's not. They're just getting rich and we're just creating a bigger problem. But just to play devil's advocate here, what would happen if we closed all private prisons? Who would absorb that cost? Would we absorb that cost? Would the American people? Taxpayers? How would we handle that? If we decriminalized all drugs and people that were in prison for drug crimes were released on the street, like today, would they reoffend? Were they given the tools that they need in prison to live sober, healthy, and happy lives? Are we giving them what they need so that re-entry is a smooth process? If we reduce the inmate population, could we reallocate the funds that we were no longer spending on housing inmates? Can we reallocate that towards treatment? Because over half of the inmate population is serving time on a non-violent drug offense. So if we eliminate half of the population that is in prison, how could we help everyone? It's really complicated, and I don't have all the answers, but something needs to change. Something needs to change, because all we are seeing right now, we're just throwing bad money on top of bad money on top of bad money, hoping that it gets better. Building more prisons and building more facilities when those prisons don't help the inmates is not the answer. So it was a need in the 80s to build these prisons. Now we have those prisons, and we can see in the year 2020 that it is not working, and recidivism is really high, and more people are getting locked up because of non-violent drug crimes. We can see that this is not doing anything beneficial to our society. But how do we fix it? How do we fix it? And I think it's not going to be fixed overnight. I think because we've been doing this for so long, it's going to take a long time to repair. And certain things are going to have to happen that honestly will piss the American people off. We're going to have to make radical change. If we want to see radical change, we have to do something different, and we're going to need to do that in a way that is going to upset people. But what we see is not working. It is just continuing to get worse. So how can we fix it? I would love to hear your guys' opinions in the comment section down below. I want to hear what you would think would help the prison system and substance abuse and treatment and private prison versus public prison. I want to hear your guys' thoughts in the comment section, so please let me know. I'm going to end today's video here. I love you guys. Stay safe, stay sober. Please do not break the law, and I will see you guys in my next one.